With the third presidential debate just wrapping up, join us today as we talk about our winners and losers of the debate, as well as the state of the race moving in to November and Election Day. Welcome to your Political Perch. Hey guys, and welcome to the Political Perch Podcast, a bi-weekly podcast that talks about current events, politics, presidents, history, and anything that is plaguing the United States of America. Join us. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Political Perch Podcast. Today is a special edition, a little bit later in the week due to some technicality issues, but Ashton, this is our 10th edition of the Political Perch Podcast, and let me tell you, it's going to be a good one. We're going to go into this wild debate night, debate number 3 of the presidential candidates. We're going to go into the state of the race and sprinkle in some other recent news. So welcome to the Political Perch Podcast once again. As always, I am Andy, joined by my lovely co-host, Ashton.
Hello, guys. Apparently, wind kills birds, Andy. I never knew this.
With that lovely statement from Ashton that was out of Donald Trump's own mouth, let's go ahead and kick off our initial reactions to the debate. It was a much different debate than the first one, and even though this is technically the third debate, it was only the second one that we actually had due to COVID and other reasons like that. It was an hour and a half long. They had a mute button involved with it, so crazy stuff happening. Ashton, I'll let you go ahead and just kick it off. What are your initial reactions before we get into the winners and losers?
In general, it was actually a debate. So, as much as you can have a debate with Trump, it was. So, I appreciated that. I thought the moderator did a solid job. In general, from topic to topic, this was kind of a debate I expected the first time, that we ended up getting that off the rails type of Donald Trump just lighting himself on gas, or covering himself in gasoline, lighting himself on fire, and running at Biden constantly, trying to trip him up. And a lot of people don't know this, but he had Chris Christie that whole time, kind of debate coaching him, and people don't remember this, but Chris Christie kind of did a similar tactic to Rubio before the New Hampshire primary in that debate, and he just kind of suicided himself into Rubio, and it ended up costing Rubio his primary. He lost after that. So ultimately, I saw why Trump did that tactic, and clearly, I think his campaign decided to go in the exact opposite approach this time. I don't know if you feel like this was intentional, Andy, but I think it is. I thought him sitting back trying to let just Biden speak was intentional. At first, or in the first debate, they wanted to interrupt Biden so much that he couldn't keep a train of thought, and he would look like he has dementia or something. That was the theory. That didn't work out clearly. And then in this debate, they're like, well, since he has dementia, or since he can't make coherent thoughts or something, we should let Biden give full answers. I don't think either of those plans worked out like they thought it would. My general reaction is, I thought Biden did better than his first debate. He was all right. He gave kind of a vanilla performance for someone running for president. But against Donald Trump, I mean, the bar is so low for Trump. Some people are going to do the same thing they did in first debate and said, oh, Trump, he did good because he wasn't like his first debate. That's such a low bar. He did bad for a presidential candidate. He rarely answered the question. He constantly complained. And when it came down to actually talking about serious policies, Trump did not look like he deserved to be on that stage. And he constantly got outclassed by Biden when it came to healthcare and actual policies, foreign policy. I remember I thought that was going to be a strong suit for Trump, but Biden just kept on nailing him over certain things. Not to mention that whole Hunter Biden thing where Trump is trying to make it a thing when it isn't a thing. And we'll get into that a little bit more in depth. But ultimately, that fell flat. And if anything, Biden landed more hits on China than Trump did on Biden.
Yes, Ashton, I can agree with most of what you're saying there. As I was watching the debate, I know, me and you were talking back and forth throughout it. Some of the key highlights, key phrases that we'll get into later as well. But I feel like the first 45 minutes, first 40 minutes, first half of the debate was very civil for as much as it can be with these two candidates. Not much interruptions. Maybe they didn't answer the questions like they should, but it was a debate. But as time ran on and patience started to go down, feisty Biden came out. Regular old crazy Trump came out. The things he's saying, like your opening tag when you were talking about how he said windmills kills all the birds, like things like that. So I think the longer the debates go on, the harder it is because both these candidates are above the age of 70. So they're gonna get impatient, they're gonna get tired, they're gonna get feisty, and we saw that tonight. We saw feisty Biden, which some people can say that as a negative, but personally, I really enjoyed seeing that fiery debater out because for the longest time I've had people say, oh, Biden versus Trump, Biden's going to get destroyed in these debates. He's going to look like an old man with dementia. But honestly, he's held his own pretty well, especially in a format where, I thought going into this debate, I was a little worried for Biden because him having that mute button, being forced to talk without any interruptions, a full time, I was a little worried about, but he had very good composure, did very well. There was a few gaffes in there. It's going to happen, but not as bad as it could have been. And overall, he was the more sensible candidate. And you know, I think Trump was playing more to his base, like he has been the past debate, which is just weird to me, because you're at a time where you don't need just your base; you need those undecideds. And I think Biden had a better debate for those undecideds and looked like the more sensible choice for president.
Yeah, Andy, I will definitely say, in a typical campaign, if Biden was running against, let's say, John Kasich or something, I think it would have been problematic the way how Biden speaks, how he has a stutter. He does say gaffes and stuff because, in order to stop that stutter, you have to go with what's on your mind, and that can cause you to say gaffes. And he just says stupid stuff sometimes. He just so happens, Andy, to be so lucky to be again across the debate stage with a guy who says wind kills birds. Last debate he said Democrats will take your cows. So, Democrats are going to take people's cows and kill the birds. Um, I just think it's one of those things where in a normal campaign I would agree with you that would have a major impact. And not major, but it would have an impact on Biden. But again, you get inoculated when you have Trump just sitting there saying sometimes he would just say crazy stuff and like there it's so many times I can't keep track of it in my mind. Like I think at one point Biden said, "Oh, there's 450 kids that can't get to their parents," and Trump said, "Good," right after that. I mean, it's just crazy things that normally would just wreck a campaign that that Trump will just say and people just don't care. Now we're used to that. The question is, what did Trump need in this debate? What did Biden need in this debate, Andy? And ultimately, I look at it as a football game. Right now, we're in the fourth quarter. Biden is clearly up. Let's say he's up, a good margin, 27, and Trump is down. Trump has only scored 10 points. He's down 17 points. There's only 4 minutes left. Is it unrealistic or is it crazy to say there's a possibility miracle could happen and he could come back? No, technically there's a possibility. You never say never. Does he need things to go in his favor completely? Yes. He needed this is like one play where he has to try to make 40, 50 yards in one chunk and he has no timeouts and he just kept on throwing it down the field and I don't think he landed any of those catches.
100%, Ashton. I wouldn't say that this debate by Donald Trump was bad by any means. It wasn't a bad performance, but it wasn't the knock out of the park, this is the candidate I'm voting for kind of performance. It's not that A level grade, a little spoiler there, but and he needed that. He is behind in the polls a lot more than Hillary Clinton was at this time. Let's not forget that. We talk about that a lot throughout our podcasts and videos that it's not 2016, it's a different election. The consistency is there from Biden. The huge lead is there from Biden and has been for months. He needed this knockout performance to really start changing the minds going, 2 weeks away from voting. And we've already had tons of voting happen already. So he needed that knockout performance, and he just, I don't think, really did that knockout performance.
Yeah, every day that goes by, there's less and less of the electorate that he can reach. Right now, around a third of 2016 has voted. Now, I think there's going to be a higher turnout than 2016. That doesn't favor Donald Trump at all. If anything, you want lower turnout than 2016. But the problem is when you're 10 points behind and you have an election that is tailor made for people to go out and vote early and bank votes. Biden isn't a typical front runner in the sense that, 85% of the votes will be cast on election day. No, it's going to be more around 60, 70 before election day. And right now, it's around 30% already had been voted. So Biden has had 30% of the vote counted, or not counted, put in when he had a 10-point lead. So Trump is constantly having to make up ground, and like you said, he needed a A performance, and he needed Biden to have a F. He needed Biden to have either really major gaffe or just a meltdown on the stage and not be able to answer anything for 30 minutes. That's
I,
not what happened this debate.
I will say this to kind of knock Biden's performance. I think, like I told you, with the fatigue going into the final 30 minutes, and when they kind of got to the global warming climate change part, is kind of when we saw Biden struggle a little bit, kind of lost his momentum. I think Trump did lay some good hits on him. I'm not saying it was perfect because obviously Trump had the bird line there, but I feel like Biden's performance with the thing he said about oil and those states and the way Trump has responded to that was pretty well done. And but as I'm sitting there watching and he's saying, "Oh, there goes Oklahoma, there goes Texas," to me personally, those two states are already in Trump's favor. So I don't understand why he's fighting so hard and like yelling at Biden about that. But Biden did struggle when it comes to global warming because the fracking thing, Kamala Harris did say she wanted to ban fracking. Now, it's gone back. So, that's something that Trump took advantage of, and that's a good political strategy to use. And always, when you bring up AOC and the other congresswomen that a lot of Republicans and conservatives hate, it's always, bodes in his favor. So I'll give him the credit for those, last 15, 20 to 25 minutes. But the other hour of the debate was all Biden.
Yeah. Andy, you said when he brings up AOC that works in his favor. I don't agree because he already has Republicans. Republicans are gonna vote for him overwhelmingly, like 85% at least. He
Ashton, I see,
doesn't.
I see what you're saying. I know your point at is yes, that helps his base, but a lot of undecided voters do not like AOC and the further left Democratic Party congressmen like AOC and like Bernie Sanders.
I don't disagree with you there, but the problem is, and I thought Biden had one of his best moments of debate when he said, "I beat those people in the primary. I beat them because I disagreed with them." And I thought that was a perfect response for what Trump was doing. Biden even said that Trump didn't even know who he was running against, which I thought that was a very sly remark to Trump always claiming Biden has dementia. I thought that was kind of like that was sassy Biden, where I know I text you sometimes like what I would say. And Biden isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. He's a little old, but he still got some of it when he gets angry. You could tell he was biting at the limb, or not limb, but he was just like ready to go sometimes with a really good response. And he didn't hit out of the park. I thought Biden was all right. I mean, in typical terms, he did all right. I don't think Biden would win an election, a normal election, but this isn't a normal election. That's not what Biden needs to do.
Definitely not. Definitely not, Ashton. I mean, I like, as much as I respect Biden as the person, politically, he is a damaged politician. I know for sure he's ran at least once before. I'm like
Three
99%
times.
sure this is his third time running for president. So he's lost before. He's had tons of problems with being able to be credible when it comes to becoming president. So if it was any other candidate, if it was any other time in history, Biden would not have won. This would not be in the league, would not be most likely the next president. And it just goes to show you that, if, but Biden does have enough to not be the worst candidate in history, if that makes sense, if you get what I'm saying
Well,
there.
I think ironically, he's going to get the most votes out of anyone to ever run for president. And I think people misunderstand this sometimes. Biden is perfect for this moment, in the sense that, yes, he's boring. That would have typically been a knock during the other year. Yes, he's been there for a while. And yes, he's been stable. And yes, he hasn't done, um, he hasn't had an amazing career. But that's what Americans want this year. They're tired of the chaos. And I feel like Biden going into this election, he had to be himself, be boring, and be solid, and just be good enough where people could see that, okay, he can be president. I can rest easy. And, I think he accomplished that in this debate. It wasn't a perfect debate. I agree with you, last 20 minutes wasn't Biden's best. I thought the first 10 minutes wasn't Biden's best either, but everything else was just solid. Biden even got a malarkey thrown in there. I kind of laughed when I heard that.
Yes. Oh man, I love that Malarkey, man. He's so old. It's just funny, but just goes to show you. I think one of the reasons why it's so easy for the Republicans. I think one of the statements that Trump said was, or one of the pundits said was, 10% of the Republicans are like flipping script and voting for Biden or third party. And I think it's so easy for them to vote for Biden, Republicans to vote for Biden, other than Democrats than Trump, is because Biden is this boring candidate. He's going to sit there for 4 years, but the Republicans, like you, like me, know that it's kind of the 4 year rental program that Biden's not going to rerun for election. He's too old, and there's a possibility that he may not even make it out of his first term. That's always a possibility. But we know that another 4 years of Donald Trump is really the complete end of the Republican Party as we know it. So it's kind of just bide your time, buy 4 years, restructure, rebuild the Republican Party, and try again in 2024, which is, that's how Biden is winning this race. He's not the perfect candidate, like we've been saying, but he's right for the moment, like you said, and it's causing people to rally around him and rally against Trump. But Ashton, let's go ahead and transition and give out our grades for the election. Always a fun time giving a firm, like, just grade on it, what we think. So, Ashton, I'll let you start. What are your grades for Donald Trump for this election? This debate, I mean.
On this debate, I'll give Trump a um I'll give him a B minus. I thought his posure was a lot better than the first debate. Him not interrupting helped him. Like, when it comes to the camera, he looked a lot better than the first debate. The substance in what he was saying wasn't there at all, at least in my opinion. But when it comes to the general presentation, it was a lot better. Um, it's still not what he needed. So that's my grade for Trump. For Biden, I'll give Biden a B plus. It wasn't a A. It wasn't a knockout. He didn't like deliver knockout blow by knockout blow, but he hit Trump a few times and he drew blood. He definitely drew blood. And I thought he was more solid at this debate because he had more time to think. I told you last time the only reason why Biden didn't do better in the last debate, he didn't even have time to answer any questions. He had time and he answered questions most questions he answered decently well. It's not perfect. It's not like he's Pete Buttigieg. He's not going to give you a very, very sophisticated answer in a 50-second soundbite with a lot of energy and charisma. That's not Joe Biden. But then again, like I said, this theme of the podcast is he didn't really need to do much. He can sit on cruise the whole time. He doesn't need the speed to get to work. He's going to get there on time. It's Trump making up for lost time.
I will start my grading with Joe Biden. I would give him a B for the overall debate performance, close to yours, but a little bit worse. If I was grading him on the first hour alone, he's in that A territory. Honestly, it was a very good first hour for Joe Biden. You go into that last 30 minutes, like I've said, it just did not bode well. Lost the fatigue, lost the steam at the end of the little marathon there, which brought his score down to that B rating. Still, I mean, it was a solid, like you said, got some punches in there. He had some gaffes, which hurt him a little bit, but nothing major. So a nice B performance, nothing that's going to really help him, but definitely not anything that's going to hurt him. On the Trump side, I would actually give Trump a C plus. I think it was a lot better than this first, but then again, that's like we said, a low standard to achieve, to improve upon. But the first couple minutes was fine for Donald Trump. I feel like then he kind of went into his loony mode a little bit. The last little part, like I said, the 30 minutes where he was kind of better than Biden helped him. But the problem with Donald Trump, and it's really like this with any of his debates, is he loves to pull numbers and just say random numbers and spew it out at you. But Donald Trump's is a lot easier to fact check than Joe Biden is, at least for the common person, not the deep dive researcher. Let me go find every little video you said on this topic. But one of the things I sent you was he said the South Korea capital of Seoul had a population of 32 million people. He said 32 million people dead. If a nuke or something happened with North Korea. Easy fact check. I go in there, under 10 million people. It's not a big deal, but when he's exaggerating about just a population number, imagine what he's exaggerating with your taxes, with the COVID uh, testing and all that kind of stuff. That's the problem. That's what hurts him. He still did good for his base, not enough really to reach the undecideds. So a C plus for me with Donald Trump.
Andy. He's the best president for African Americans since Lincoln.
Oh man, I don't even want to. I didn't bring that up, Ashton, because I didn't want to have to talk about the audacity of this man saying that he said he's possibly the exception is Lincoln, not even the exception. Do we really have to have a debate about how there's many presidents that were better for black people than him? Abraham Lincoln, Lyndon B. Johnson. Like, what? I don't understand. The 1960s Civil Rights Act was Lyndon B. Johnson. That was not Donald Trump. Like, I don't want to spend time on that because I don't want to give him the satisfaction of it, honestly, Ashton. But guys, that is our debate, reaction and grades. We hope, let us know what you guys think. If you thought Biden won or Trump won, let us know down in the comments. Or, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or any other podcasting site, just, tweet us on Twitter what you think at the Mr. R Show. We'd love to hear from you guys. But let's kind of move on a little, get away from the two candidates specifically as in debate or like state of the race, and kind of let's talk about this whole Hunter Biden controversy and social media censorship that was touched on a lot by Donald Trump at this debate. So, social media companies, Twitter and Facebook especially, choose to limit the circulation of the New York Post stories about Hunter Biden and stuff like that, offer different reasons for it, and they also ban or limit accounts that push said story. Here are the actual information and facts of the story from the Daily Beast. So the FBI is investigating the purloined laptop materials from Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, as part of a possible foreign disinformation operation from Russia. A congressional source told the Daily Beast an investigation at odds with a statement from President Donald Trump's Director of National Intelligence. John Ratcliffe, the Director of the National Intelligence, told Fox News on Monday that the dissemination of materials from Hunter Biden's alleged laptop was not part of a Russian disinformation campaign. The intelligence community does not believe that because there is no intelligence that supports that, Ratcliffe said. But the assessment gets out in front of the FBI, which took custody of the laptop and an external hard drive as early as back in December, according to the New York Post. The Bureau, according to the congressional source, is looking into the provenance of the material, and among the questions they're seeking to answer is whether the laptop dump is part of what the intelligence community's counterintelligence chief has already described as a Russian disinformation effort targeting the 2020 election. We saw a lot about this in the debate, Ashton. What's going on? What's your reactions? Is this credible? Is it not credible? What the heck's happening?
I really honestly think if this was credible, the FBI would have already done something. I think it's pretty clear it is Russian disinformation. That's my opinion. Um, it really is like so ludicrous, the story that somehow Rudy Giuliani found a random laptop in Delaware that happened to be left by Hunter Biden, that was a Mac, that happened to be hacked into or broken into by the store owner, that happened to have all these PDF emails or PDFs of emails, that happened to have all the things Trump alleges or beforehand alleges that Biden has done corrupt or illegally. It just to me is very convenient. It comes out as just, you know, it comes out as fake and not a real issue, and that's why it hasn't taken off past Fox News. Like, it doesn't deserve to, because there's nothing supporting it. Nothing says this laptop is number one actually Hunter Biden's. Nothing says those emails are remotely real to start with. Um it's just weird that Trump wants to make this a centerpiece of his campaign right now. I guess they're trying to replay the whole Hillary Clinton's emails thing from 2016, and it's totally different. You can't do that again. Number one, it's stale. Number two, people actually knew those were actually Hillary's emails. That's not the same this time. And it to me, if the FBI director, that's the only person I would believe in this situation. If he came out and said, "Hey, they're real," then I would take it seriously, but he hasn't. And he doesn't need to if it's under investigation. And if it's under investigation, there's no point in talking about it because people don't know if it's true or not. And
I
the
think
DNI, the thing he said, DNI is complete partisan hack. He was a Republican congressman for a while. I don't think people need to pay attention to him. He didn't even have the experience to get nominated and was only nominated on a purely partisan vote.
I think one of the major reasons why this story really, other than the Republican specter, isn't really taken off is because of Donald Trump being the person, trying to use this for his advantage. It's hypocrisy. I mean, are we not going to ever talk about the Trump children and their foreign dealings? Are we ever going to talk about Trump and his foreign dealings? Ivanka Trump's got businesses in China. Donald Trump has many different bank accounts across the world. He said that today in the debate. Said some weird kind of, I opened it then, closed it, opened it again, then closed it again, like multiple closings and openings in China. None of this sounds fishy to the Americans. That, oh, he's just, opening and closing bank accounts in China. No big deal. That's something a normal president does on a normal day, is opening and closing foreign bank accounts. It's ridiculous that he has the gall to stand up there and tell Joe Biden, you're evil. You're taking money from Russia. You're taking money from China. You're taking money from all these foreign people. Yet he's literally having bank accounts in other countries. He's doing business in other countries. He handed down the company and gave his sons the job in the company. Yet he wants to yell at Hunter Biden for kind of doing the same thing. It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I don't know about the credibility of the story. It's a weird October, so anything's possible. But it's a little fishy. Everything kind of senses like kind of it was a ploy, and it is what it is. But I just don't like how the Trump administration wants to sit there and like point fingers when they're doing almost exactly the same thing, if it's true.
Yeah, this is a story that came from Rudy Giuliani, the same guy who was let's say not caught in a favorable situation in a Borat movie. This is not a competent campaign. This is not a confident campaign either. And to me, it reeks of desperation. It really does. Like, he can't talk about COVID. He can't talk about healthcare. Like, I was expecting Biden to do all right in healthcare and Trump to do all right. But Biden, that was probably one of the best segments for Biden. Was it was purely in the middle, and Biden was whacking Trump over healthcare. It was really, really shocking to me.
It's shocking to me because you said the healthcare thing. a lot of the issue is the public option and how Biden is fighting for a public option to healthcare. Yet Trump is calling a public option, meaning the public has the option to do something, to choose this kind of healthcare, socialistic healthcare, or what was it? He said, socialism medicine or something along those lines. It's just big words that gets his base riled up, but it's not going to do anything when it comes to the middle of the pack undecideds or trying to flip Democrats in your favor. It's just not going to work, and that's why he's leaking and sinking like he's a boat out in the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, Andy. Let's go ahead and kind of move on to state of the race and kind of get to the general overall what is happening and what we think will happen. Right now, me and you did a kind of 101 to 70 map. We both did. We picked a winner for each state. Had to pick one, and if we disagreed, it's toss up. Right now, we have Biden at a composite 349 electoral votes, and Trump at 126 with 63 toss up electoral votes. So basically, out of the swing states, we give them all to Biden besides Ohio, Iowa, and Texas. We have those as toss ups. Andy right now has them going to Trump. I have them going to Biden. And weirdly, we aren't talking about the swing state of Oklahoma. Haha. I'm gonna just make that bad joke right there. Um, Andy, what's your reaction to our composite map? Is it shocking to you that really it hasn't moved at all during this very unpredictable race?
To me, I think what's a little I wouldn't say shocking, but kind of interesting is that our personal maps, our composite map of who we think is going where, kind of gives Trump a little bit of more than the RCP national average does. Because me and you debate Ohio, Texas, Iowa. RCP average gives two of those to Trump, but gives Iowa to Biden. So we're a little bit more lenient when it comes to Trump, giving him a little bit more credit. But these RCP polls are not in favor of Biden of Trump. But it doesn't shock me that nothing has changed. That Biden is out in front and by a huge margin in both of our personal and the RCP national average maps, because Trump hasn't done anything to fix the curve. Like, he's not done since basically his damage was done at the beginning of this year. He hasn't done anything to help him. And the only thing he's done is hurt himself or stayed the same. And you can't do that when you're losing at 1.8 points, when we're like 6 points, 8 points. And now I saw things up to plus 10 points for Biden. It's crazy because we're getting to the point where margin of error isn't even a factor because Biden's leading so much.
Well, I'll also remind people that uh, ultimately it's things like the Trump poll that was one of the only reasons why no toss ups had Trump winning Ohio. Ultimately, I do think Ohio is a very, very close race right now. I think Trump ends up losing it narrowly by like 2 or 3 points. But ultimately, I agree with you. It's very weird how going into this debate, Trump even mentioned during debate when he was talking about swing states, he mentioned Texas and Oklahoma. If you're a Republican talking about Texas and Oklahoma 2 weeks before the election, you're not in a good position. You're not. And I know people want to stay. It's like Democrats have PTSD from 2016 and Republicans have the sugar high from like you get on election night, but for some reason Republicans keep that sugar high and have kept it for 4 years and magically think the polls are going to be all wrong when there was a margin of error Trump could win. There was a realistic margin of error. It was like having the same error or same chance of throwing a Hail Mary at a 40-yard line to get you a touchdown in order to win the game. Same chance. He threw it, he got it. That doesn't mean it's going to happen again. And I think Republicans are assuming it will, and Democrats are assuming that all the polls are going to be wrong too. And I think it's interesting how both are going into this election. And I'm trying my best to just look at the data and read why I think both candidates are doing good or bad. And the Texas early vote data, we can kind of transition into that. It's really shocking, Andy, because for last week, I think I had Trump winning Texas. I started believing the polls a little bit more and more about Texas just being a little bit harder for Biden to do than, like, let's say Georgia. But this Texas early vote, Andy, to me, this is a death sentence for Trump in the state. Because you're already talking about when me and you filmed earlier, or not filmed, but recorded our earlier podcast. I think we had documented that Texas had gone to 50% of the early vote, or of their 2016 vote, the people who voted in 2016. It was at 50% at that point in time when we recorded that 2 days ago. It's now at 65%. It jumped 15% in a few days. You're talking
Mhm.
about millions of votes every few days. That to me does not, you do not come out and become the number one state in voter turnout after being the 50th or in the bottom five in the last few elections. You don't become number one just because you're going to stick with the same guy or the same party from you that you've been voting with for multiple elections.
It's very shocking, Ashton, just looking at the turnout so far of mail-in. Like you said, Texas, the official number as of right now, as of October 22nd, when we're recording this podcast after debate, they have voted 65.8% of all the votes casted in 2016 already before Election Day. That's insane numbers. But that's not just Texas we're talking about. Georgia's above 50%. Florida is just about to hit 50%. North Carolina is over 50%. Michigan at 40. Wisconsin at almost 40. So all these swing states, these powerful states that helped Trump win, are voting early and voting in swarms. And usually, the more people vote, the more likely it is for the Democrat to win. Because look at 2016, more people voted for Hillary, not less. So if more people vote again and the electoral college goes in favor of Biden, it's not gonna happen for Trump. Even places like Tennessee is at 50%. A solid red state like Tennessee is 50% early voting. Now, we're not going to say that every early vote, every mail in ballot's going to go for Biden. Obviously, that's not the case. That's stupid to say. That's a stupid opinion, and we don't believe that. But if just a fraction of those, if just half of those, it's a Biden victory, and a lot of people are going to come out to vote. This will most likely will be one of the highest voter turnouts in the history of the United States elections, and that's not in favor of Trump.
Yeah, a lot of people thought it was crazy. And when I said that, I thought Biden was going to get the most or the highest percent and most African American votes in the history of any candidate. I said he would even get more. I thought he had a chance of getting more than Obama. And I didn't say that for no reason. It's the circumstances. It's not necessarily Biden himself, but he enables those people to believe in him and his message. And Trump is just the ultimate turnout machine for anyone in the middle or the left that just straight out come out and vote. And when you say, hey, if it's close, I'm going to say the entire system's rigged and try to throw it in the chaos. American voters will be like, I guess we can't make it close then. And, there's debate. Let's get into the political ramifications of it. I think, I think I was pretty good with the last debate with saying that Biden would get a 3-point bounce out of it. He did. Now that was a sugar high that went down, but I think I see Biden getting a 2-point bounce out of this debate. I really do. I think Biden was all right, but Trump was still bad enough on certain issues that he's gonna kill himself in certain states with certain demographics, like old people and his COVID answers. Just not good. and you need old people to win Arizona and Florida. You really do. In Florida right now, in the early votes, I actually analyzed this, and a lot of Trump's counties are overperforming their percentages as the total vote of Florida. Like, um, I think it was like Baker County or something was like in 2016, like 0.60% of the state's total vote, and now it's like 0.90%. He's overperforming in a lot of small counties, or not he, but the counties are overperforming with how many voters are already voting as of their vote total vote in 2016. Trump is losing by 500,000 ballots.
Mm.
His counties are bigger share of the distribution of votes currently in early voting than Hillary's, and he is losing by 500,000 votes. Now, early votes will tend to be Democratic. I agree. So, it's you can't really find any breakdown of 2016 early voting. They didn't do that year. But you can find out. Do you want to know what hole the Republicans were in on election day on early voting in 2016, Andy?
I would
You
doubt as
you want to
high as
guess?
now.
You want to guess?
You guessing the hole? You said how far
Yeah,
back they were
yeah. How far back they were on election day, the Republicans.
based on points or like electoral votes.
Like out a number in Florida, how many votes down were they? Because Florida allows you or reports party ID.
I
So
don't know because I know Trump won in Florida, so I don't know. Were they down
yeah,
like?
Trump won by 100,000. He
I guess
came
were they
into
down by like?
election. He
I'll
came
guess.
into
I'll guess that they were down like I don't know 150,000 votes going into election day.
they were down 100,000.
Okay, okay.
100,000 votes on election day. I'm telling you now, Andy, the fact that 70-80% of Florida would have already voted by election day. If he is down 500,000 votes still, and he's going to lose independence, I guarantee you that in every swing state, he's going to lose independence at least 60%. I think it'll be more 70-80. And if it's 70-80, you're talking about you add another 200,000 onto whatever the amount the Democrats is. If it's even 500,000 going into election day, mathematically, I don't see how he wins the state.
Yeah, Ashton. Yeah, I 100% agree. It's going to be very tough for Trump to climb out of a hole that he himself has basically dug himself. But another interesting thing to look at, something that Trump said in the debate tonight, was he thinks that the Republicans are going to win the House. That's not gonna happen. I mean, if you look at, you can go to, if you guys want to, go to 270towin.com. You can look at their house map up right now. But their consensus forecast is that, guess what? The Democrats are going to hold. They're not going to change much, but the Republicans are going to lose seats to independents. So that's not good news because it looks like the Democrats are going to keep, again, I mean, it's a lot less Democrats being contested and a lot more Republicans. So I don't see where that basis is coming from. And there's a chance that both the House and the Senate will flip and presidency will all be Democratic due to this administration.
Not to mention, the generic ballot for Democrats on the congressional level has been lagging Biden. They've been behind Biden by 3 or 4 points. They've only been leading the Republicans generically by like six points or so. And even with 6 points, they're slated to gain at least an average of 7. That's after already winning 40, which was a record for Democrats in a off election year. A lot of people don't realize how big of a deal it was for Democrats to win that election that way in 2018. Democrats typically don't win in off year elections and don't win by margins like that. Republicans are very good in low turnout elections because their voters typically always turn out. But when Democrats turn out, and I think this year is turning out, or sorry, pun. If this year ends up being a turnout race where you get like above 62% population turnout, that's a death sentence for Republicans congressionally. I don't even think they have a single percentage chance that they will win uh, the House.
The
There's no way.
the biggest factor in me saying that the House is definitely staying for the Democrats is let's take a look at my home state, South Carolina. One of our congressmen here, Joe Wilson, is a 10-term Republican congressman up for re-election, and he is in a tight race with a Democrat challenger woman, Adair Burrows. That's insane. I'm not saying she's not a great, candidate. She is, but for a hugely Republican district, hugely Republican state to be in, Joe Wilson's most likely going to win. But the fact that he is contested, it's showing that there's a lot of losses in the Republican Party in the House.
Yeah, Andy, it's little warning signs like that. Like there are people saying that there are internal polls in Missouri showing that a few of the Congress people in that Republican state are on the edge of losing their seats, and that the state generally is 2 or 3 points for Trump right now. I mean, there are flashing lights, and you have to be aware if you're a Republican to read that. You don't need to ignore them. You need to prepare because if you don't, you're going to lose some seats and some people are going to lose in surprising places. Like Republicans will wake up the day after and be like, "Oh wow, how did that guy in Alaska lose?" Like whoever thought a independent could win in Alaska, or how did the South Carolina congressman who was there for so long, how did he lose? Like it's cuz you didn't pay attention at all, and the Democratic candidate just came in from underneath and kind of swoop that out of your hands. And it if it's a 1984 type election, not 1984, but if it's a 1980 type election, Republicans going to lose some surprising seats because of turnout, because independents will break one way and then Democrats will out turn out. Like that's how you lose some solidly red states that you don't expect, is when Democrats turn out in huge amounts you never seen in certain states. Republicans are at the same level or depressed, and then independents break fully one way. And if that happens, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at even electorally a blue Louisiana, a blue Tennessee, or something neither of us saw coming at all, or the polls. I don't know if it's going to be a wave election in that sense. I do think it will be a 10-point victory, a 11-point victory is kind of where I've been resting for a long time. I still feel like 11 points. The polls will bounce up to 12 and 13 again after debate, and then they'll come back down the week of the election. But it's really shocking how people are just completely not paying attention on the right.
Yeah, 100%, Ashton. It's going to be interesting election day, just to see. We're both predicting a Biden win, but we're going to see how the House holds up, how the Senate holds up, and where these little sneaky little victories are going to pop up because they're not watching it and they're not protective of it. But guys, thank you for joining us again on our 10th edition of this Political Perch podcast. The debate was quite an event. We're getting very close to the election. We're under 2 weeks away now. So please go out to vote early, by mail, in person. It doesn't matter. But we need your voice. We need your vote. Everything counts. We need you to go out and cast your ballot for whoever you vote for. It does not matter. Thank you guys for listening. Wherever you're listening, give us a like, a share, subscribe, whatever you're listening on, rating. We do appreciate it, and we do love that you guys are listening to it and helping us grow this podcast because we love doing it, and we're going to keep up every single week until this hot cycle of politic news dies down a little bit, and then we'll probably go back to bi-weekly. But again, guys, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys next week on the next Political Perch podcast.